Real Talk.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Real Talk together with my extraordinary partner dito si Mark Gamboa, and again our special guest, of course, Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. In a previous episode, we discussed about public service, your experience working in different administration, and then of course inevitably napunta kay Digong yung usapan, and that's gonna be like a 4-hour podcast in itself. Pero for the purpose of discipline, we had to transition now because I think now we're really discussing issues. No,
yes.
Let's talk about this. So what you're saying is that one of the important things working in the government is making the executive call, being decisive, and you felt that was something that you saw, especially when you were working in the ILG, right?
Yes, that's right. I saw it up front, no, and the leadership and the determination to improve. No matter what other people say, he really had a vision for the country. It could have been, it could have been wrong in some people's eyes, but he knew what he wanted to do, and he went on to do it.
And what were the toughest times? What are the toughest calls or for you personally, ano yung mga pinakamahirap nung time na spokesman ka, diba? ng DILG,
yes.
No? Nung time niya, I remember we were quoting you a lot. Because of course, there were a number of things that happened also during the pandemic. No, hindi lang pandemic itself. You had the ABS-CBN situation.
Yes. I was affected by that. I had a show on ABS-CBN.
Exactly. Diba? So, isa ka rin, diba? And then there was also, of course, the new anti-terror law,
yes.
Which of course also created a lot of concerns, and then there were also concerns about weaponization of the pandemic restrictions to shut down any of criticism. Of course, this is the position of the critics.
All right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because this very much sets the stage for us to discuss your current role as a spokesman for the National Security Council. So clearly, there's a continuity. Hindi lang yung boss mo, si General Anyo, who I had the pleasure of also interviewing back in the day as a DLG secretary.
And he remembers it.
And he was really, really good. I was really
I mentioned
impressed.
to him, I'm going to see you. And then he said, Richard came to DILG.
Yes.
But I wasn't there. So I don't know.
Yun nga eh.
Siya nag-remind sa akin. He remembers you.
Yeah, he's very impressive, very evidence-based. He was really on top of his stuff. So I was not surprised. He relies on people like Now going back to this, how was it in navigation of that? That's quite difficult, right? Because I mean, you come from UP. A lot of your friends are, progressives or liberals, I suppose. So this is not only about getting bashed by strangers online. I'm sure you had to also deal with people closer to your circles who perhaps had issues with, the communications that was coming out of the administration.
I'm sure.
Sorry, real talk na talaga. So here we are, Jonathan Malaya.
Yeah. I'm sure there are, but I respect that. In fact, but I was surprised, Richard, Mark. I was surprised when I was appointed to the DILG. I got support from both sides of the aisle.
Right.
I was getting statements from friends, as you said, progressives, liberals, and those who are supporting the Liberal Party, if I may call them that, no? And then those who are pro Duterte. So, sabi ko, wow, I didn't expect it, no? Because a lot of people were saying, we look forward to, what you're going to do. So I really didn't have any problem dealing with them. Parang I think they saw me as someone who can go beyond politics, or to or someone who is not doing this for political purposes alone.
And you're not from inner circle of Digong. You're not from the Davao, circles and all, right? That our understanding is you were hired because of your merit, right?
Yes,
and what you bring to the government.
Yes, I was recommended by Senate President Coco Pimentel, who was at that time head of the Senate, to the president. I was also recommended by one of our OIC secretaries before NSA Anyo came in to become undersecretary or assistant secretary at the DILG. But eventually, I joined PDP Laban. So that's the political party.
So you were not part of PDP Laban before, no?
No. I was Liberal Party before, if you believe. Yes. I was Liberal Party before. Nako, lumabas na. UP days. I was Young Liberals.
Really?
Kalipi.
So you were a minority also in UP? Because ang UP ayaw rin sa liberal, diba? So yan? Left yan.
Kabataang Liberal ng Pilipinas. I was Vice President of Kalipi.
No.
Yes, national.
No.
Yeah, and I became the chairman of the Young Liberals and Democrats of Asia.
Oh, right. Yeah. Clad ba yun? Yeah.
CALD is the mother.
CALD, sorry. Yeah,
You know these people.
Yeah,
huh?
I was just with one of their conferences recently.
CALD is the mother organization.
Yeah.
YLDA is the youth side. So I was many years with the Liberal Party.
Well, when was this? I know bata ka, pero...
I know, but you know what happened? The split?
Yeah. I have no idea. So,
GMA.
Oh.
During the GMA time, there were two... we're ano
No.
this is history, no?
Yeah. No, but might as well.
Might as well, yeah.
Because the reason why we have here is because you have worked in different administration, and your point is public service, partisanship. That is there, but it's always beyond that. But still, maritas natin. So yun yung... Kaya nga
there was a split, if you remember.
Mabaho ka talaga sa mga liberals and progressives Yung pala.
They know me. Everybody knows me there on that side of the fence because I was with them I was a college student. I worked for some Liberal Party congressman in Congress. And then I was part of... Before the Liberal Party became the large Liberal Party during the Ninoy Aquino administration, I was already with the Liberal Party. But because of the split, remember that the call for GMA to resign? Right?
2007
Haya 10.
Mas maaga pa.
Yeah. Because of that, nag-split yung Liberal Party.
I see. Yun sila sa Purisima.
That's right.
Exactly,
that's right. So
I know that.
I find myself, my boss then was Congressman Ed Nachura, who later became Justice of the Supreme Court.
Interesting.
He was my first mentor.
Interesting.
So sabi ni Congressman Ed Nachura, John, let's stay put with the GMA. So I stay put with GMA. And then that sort of finished my career with the Liberal Party.
Na-cancelled ka na.
Na-cancel na ako. Na-cancel culture ako doon.
First victim.
Yes.
But they never forgot, also the days that they spent with you. And then, of course, later on working with Digong, how did it feel? Because, again, many people still welcome you working in such a sensitive, important positions at the ALG. And yet, of course, there were also many concerns about human rights.
Yes.
Pag-usapan natin na red tagging pa later on because this is something that concerns your current portfolio. And again, issues with freedom of expression, etc. Like, how are you processing this? Because, you're on the government side.
I never saw any issue about freedom of expression in the Philippines. To be perfectly honest. Some people may consider the ABS-CBN shutdown, which I said affected me directly because I had a show on DZMM every Wednesdays and Saturdays, but I never saw it as a government attempt to suppress dissent or anything because it's a very vibrant democracy. People are vlogging, people are attacking each other on social media. There's so many newspapers, so many TV stations. So there's a lot, There's a lot of avenues for freedom of expression. So I never saw it that way.
How do you feel na during that time of Digong, ang favorite target ng mga supporters ay yung liberal party na you used to be a part of, and yung mga ibang friends mo siguro nandun para sila yung paboritong inaatake or sila yung paboritong yun nga parang punching bag nung mga supporters ng admin.
No comment na lang.
I could see in his face like yes. All right. We don't want to put you in trouble. But I appreciate you. At least being open to this kind of discussion. Now, this is where magta-transition na talaga tayo sa current portfolio mo. No?
Yes.
Let's talk about this because the argument is, well, Digong in his first year or so was on kind of good terms with people from the left progressive side. I just interviewed Representative Castro and also
here in this program?
No, for a different program.
Okay.
We don't have to jump on. No, and also Teddy Casino, etc. I asked them, like, didn't some of your friends join actually even the administration? I think there was the NAPSI, there was the DAR.
Yes. Members of the cabinet.
Exactly. So there are at least 3 of them I can remember. And then there was and then the SWD, obviously. And then things kind of fell apart later on. And then the accusation is Digong went from a self-described socialist who always said he's not a communist, but had a kind of a reasonable communication channels with folks from the communist or left movement when he was in Davao, into something completely different. No, I mean, words like fascists have been thrown against him. The arguments that there's red tagging, etc. And this has overlap with your current portfolio. Kasi the argument is it started during Digong, at hanggang ngayon we're still seeing the echoes of that.
Information ng NTF-ELCAC
which is of course your part of. So can we first start about what is this NTF-ELCAC all about? What is the genesis of this? What is the what's the mandate of this interagency task force?
Well, you're right. At the beginning, the President Duterte was really a leftist. In fact, he had the support of the leftist groups. He had very good relationships with many of the commanders in Mindanao. No, kasi at that time, Davao region was really the hotbed of insurgency.
Right.
No, so he thought he could work with the leftist movement. He really thought. That's why at the beginning he opened up the doors of Malacañang, di ba? There were people rallying in front of Malacañang, pinapasok niya, pinakain niya, and as you said, he appointed key members of the leftist groups in cabinet positions. Pero later on, nagkaroon ng falling out. Well, I think the biggest problem was when there was a attempted ambush. Well, it was an ambush of the PSG in Mindanao. Okay, so parang sabi ni Presidente, anong meron?
Parang February 2017 or something like that.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yes. And at the beginning, the peace talks was okay. In fact, many of the leaders of the communist movement were released by government. Even the Chamsons. And nung naglaho, nawala na yung peace talks. Naglaho na, and we have to recapture them again. Okay? So I think if ever we're talking about the genesis of the communist movement, the NTF-ELCAC.
Iba-usapan yan. ELCAC, NTF-ELCAC lang tayo.
NTF-ELCAC. I think nangyari yan because parang na-frustrate na si Presidente. Na parang lahat ng administrasyon dumadaan, nagpipeace talks, wala naman nangyayari. Lahat ng administrasyon lagi niyong inaaway, wala naman nangyayari. So parang there was a realization on the part of the President na ito talaga, this is class warfare. This is not about, di ba? This is not about different administrations. So whoever is in power, kaawayan kasi class struggle nga ito eh. Yeah. And in the bourgeoisie,
against elite and
and the proletariat, no matter who is in power, whether it's Digong or anyone else, has to be destroyed. So, because of that, sabi ni Presidente, now is time to do a honest-to-goodness, whole of government approach na hindi lang nakatutok ang military and police. And that was the missing ingredient. That is why 50 years na lumakas yan. Because government was not, united.
They thought it was a military problem lang.
They thought it was a military problem. They thought it was a police problem. In fact, I'll give an example. When I was with the DepEd, we were pushing for teacher salaries, no? I was working with Franz Castro.
Right.
Yeah, because, Alliance of Concerned Teachers. So, hindi ko naman alam na at that time, the Alliance of Concerned Teachers pala was organized by the NDF or by the CPP, NPA. Hindi ko naman alam yun. No? Of course, the vast majority of the teachers in ACT are not members or cadres of the communist movement. That's not what I'm saying. But the leadership of the Alliance of Concerned Teachers is controlled by the CPP, NPA. So, hindi ko alam yun when I was with DepEd. So, I was working with them, no? Now that when I joined the ILG and the NTF-ELCAC was organized, dun nabuksan yung aking isipan na kaya pala nananalo itong mga ito. That's why they continue to thrive is because watak-watak ang gobyerno. We really allowed give the job to the give the job to the military and the police, and the civilian bureaucracy has nothing to do.
Pero they have penetrated a lot of mga different sa education, and sa iba't ibang mga sa agriculture. They have penetrated a lot of yung mga ganong, like you said nga sa ACT teachers.
That's right. The Courage, for example, yung Union, no, I'm sure many of the members of Courage, which is the Confederation of Government Employees, I'm sure many of the members of Courage do not know that the Courage was organized by the National Democratic Front. Di maalam yan eh. Kasi this is revolutionary dual tactics. It's called United Front Work by the CPP-NPA. So they use society's problems as a pretext for organizing NGOs. Pero sila ang main control niyan.
Yung what I learned din, kasi marami ako nakakasama na NTF-ELCAC over the last few months, yung Barangay Development Program.
Yes.
That's one of the main projects nung sa NTF-ELCAC that really worked daw eh.
Yes.
Could you explain to us?
Yeah, kaya gusto nilang patanggal yan taon-taon. Because whenever a certain barangay is cleared by the military, okay, papasok ka agad dyan ng DILG. Dati, pag na-clear ng military, pull out si military, punta sa kabilang bayan, and then open na naman for infiltration yung barangay. So, we devised this new system wherein once the certain barangay is cleared of CPP influence, pag pull out ng military, pasok ang DILG. There's this retooled community support program. The RCSP comes in, brings in government services, and then brings and talks to the barangay. Ano yung problema nyo? Okay, kuminsan lumalabas yan, agrarian problem, kuminsan electrification, kuminsan kalsada, kuminsan health centers. So, ililista lahat yan, and then ipapasok sa BDP. So, the Barangay Development Program funds the projects that were identified by the barangay. So, mostly kalsada ang hinihingi nila because they're far-flung, nasa bundok sila. So, that's why the BDP is a game changer. Because the BDP addresses the problems of the community and insulates them from future CPP NPA influence.
Parang I heard din kasi, parang message usually ng mga insurgency dun sa barangay is, hindi kayo, kinalimutan na kayo ng gobyerno, kaya sa amin kayo. Parang ganun that's what I heard Pero with this, parang, okay naman pala, we get this roads, we get this So parang ganun yung pinaparamdam dun sa mga barangay parang to encourage them to support na the government, not to go back to the arms ng mga insurgents.
Tama, kasi ang naratibo ng mga NPA is neglected kayo, government is callous, government is corrupt.
Which is quite true, right? In many parts of the country for quite some time. I mean, yung level of poverty. I'm not talking about government agencies per se. I'm talking about officials who have co-opted the system, political dynasties, warlordism. Obviously, you wouldn't see these groups gaining so much support. I mean, this is the longest running communist movement anywhere probably in the world, if not only nation. Right?
I agree.
There's a reason, right? There's a lot of discontent on the ground, and many administrations and regimes failed to do what was in it to deal with that. And what you're saying is finally there has been a recognition in the past few years or so na comprehensive dapat ang solution dito. Hindi pwede yung bara-bara lang.
Root of the problem.
Exactly, root of the problem.
That's right. Yes. That's right. And I agree. Poverty is endemic, no? But there are many countries in the world na poverty rin, no? Pero wala silang communist insurgency. Tayo na lang yung naiiwan dito.
Well, they did genocidal stuff, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, right? Thankfully, we didn't have a history of genocidal violence, right?
That's right. So, ang ginagawa natin dito is, we're showing government that, government has a concern for them. That's why game changer Kasi for the first time, nadalan sila ng proyekto. Right. At yung proyekto, hindi dala technically ng national government. Dala ng lokal dahil ang bidding, procurement, lokal. The Barangay Development Program is funded by the DBM and is released directly to the barangay, to the LGU. At ang LGU ang nagpo-procure. No? Kaya if you look at the GAA, you will not find the BDP in the DILG budget. You will not find it in the NSC budget.
Right.
You will find it in the DBM, Local Government Support Fund, SBDP. It's directly released to the local government.
Kung sinong LGU ang bibigyan? Paano napipili?
Ganito yan. As to the projects, it's the barangays themselves who determine kung ano yung mga proyekto. As to the barangays, it's the Philippine Army National Task Force ELCAC. Kasi sa sobrang daming barangay, hindi mo yan mabibigyan ng pondo every year, sabay-sabay. So magpa-prioritization tayo.
Right.
The reason why Davao has been declared an insurgency-free region for the first time in 50 years is because nagbuhos tayo ng Davao region. So Davao de Oro, Davao del Sur, lahat yan, wala ng NPA ngayon dyan. For the first time, because also because of the SBDP program.
Malay, we were already seeing also yung isang problema, di ba, na one reason hindi gumagana yung peace process is because, wait lang, sino kausap natin? Ito bang mga hinuli natin? May power ba talaga? Yung regional commanders, mukhang may sariling racket yan, di ba? Like parang, there was a total fragmentation. It doesn't look like a unified kind of a movement. There's a leadership. Like even with the Tiam zones, it was not very clear who was really in charge. So essentially now you're dealing with fragmented kanya-kanyang regional commanders running their own shows. And some are saying that this is really not reflective of an ideological struggle. It looks like something else already, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to deal with it, your response should be to go to the root of the problem. Yes. And at the same time, as much as you want to accept that there's some legitimate grievances there, the solution is not to topple the Filipino regime and put, some sort of a Maoist regime there, but through democratic process says to deal with that. Now, I'm very glad, Yusek Malay, that you mentioned what the NTF-ELCAC has been trying to do over the past few years or so. And in fact, when I was in Davao during Digong time pa yan, I met some of the top military commanders. One of them ends up being the AFP chief also soon. Yun din ang sinabi sa akin. So I was very encouraged when I met the military.
It was a success.
Yeah, and just to hear military commanders telling you, hindi pwede hanggang barel lang yan. Dapat involve ang different government agencies. NEDA should be involved, DILG should be involved, Kapulisan should be involved. And I would even hear from some military people saying like, hindi naman trabaho dapat itong domestic security na ito. Dapat trabaho namin to deal with... Yeah, exactly. This is a police job. That's why, ang problema, when you deal with Indonesia or Malaysia, kausap mo police hindi naman military ang ginagamit for these things, especially in Malaysia, for instance. No. Now, having said that, the thing is, the NTF-ELCAC also got a lot of negative publicity because of certain personalities. Maybe you want to mention. Baka ako yung mga dyan. Who looks like they kind of went beyond their pay grade and they were engaging in, I don't know, if freelancing, rhetorical tagging here and there. And for me, I mean, this is my point of view. You're free to disagree with me. Some of these people who were working at NTF and some of them who are still around for...
Sabihin ko na, si Ma'am Lorraine Badoy.
I mean, you have even attacking people like Mayor Magalong, for instance. I mean, what's going on? You're a communications expert, right? For me, isa itong naging problema na parang it gave very bad publicity and it crowded out itong mga reasonable,
yun ang mas maingay.
comprehensive.
Mas maingay
Kaya
kesa
natuwa
doon sa
ako na
mga
minention ni
successes na
Mark yung Barangay Development Program, comprehensive. Yun lang.
Ang daming projects na maganda, hindi na napag-usapan
kasi naging ganyan.
Because of this issue of red tagging.
Can I ask you on that? I mean, what do you have to say on that? Or no comment ka rin?
Hindi naman. Well, see, Yusek Lorraine is a very good friend and many others are very good friends. But, it's a new administration already.
Yes.
That was the approach during the previous administration. I was also part of NTF-ELCAC before, but now there's new leadership of the country. There's new direction. That is why, people were so shocked. The CBCP joined the NTF-ELCAC as part of the executive committee. And because that shows the new direction of the NTF-ELCAC. So you will not see, you will not see sort of that kind of approach anymore. No, kaya iba na ngayon ang approach namin. No, there are different people in charge. There are different individuals.
Can we lay that out? I'm sure many people want to be reassured because of a lot of the negativity surrounding the previous administration.
Could I say this then? Kasi this is what I learned then over the past few months. Kasi ang magandang tignan din, syempre, lagpas doon sa mga ingay before, yung mga red tagging and all that, is yung actual results Na parang the last I heard, dalawa or isang active fronts na lang.
Yes.
Could we talk about it? Kasi yung actual results ng buong programa.
Ito Richard and Mark, nalaman ko lang ito nung nasa NTF-ELCAC na ako.
Please.
Because di naman talaga alam ng taong bayan to The way the communist movement operates, no? So there's the above ground organizations and there's the underground organizations. And we can see that, for example, for the youth, no? So ang kinakikita ng lahat is anak bayan, nakita ng lahat is League of Filipino Students, di ba? Pero underground is the Kabataan Makabayan. So once you become part of Kabataan Makabayan, you are now a cadre and you are now part of the communist movement. So itong mga ito, they now later on ipapadala sa bundok and they become NPA regulars. So there are two they are part of one organism pero magkahiwalay na operations yung dalawang yan. Now, on the underground side, that's what you mentioned. We have been very successful and I hope masustain natin because we can't consider ourselves to be a developed country or even a developing country if we have this kind of internal security problem for 50 years, di ba?
Broken state.
It's we might as well be called a failed state if we cannot finish this problem, di ba? If we want high hopes for the country, we should crush the armed rebellion. Kasi wala naman ang subversion So, let's dichotomize. So, dito tayo. We now down to 20 guerrilla fronts, spread out.
From 90 plus before yata?
Yes, around 80 something.
80 something.
At the start of when NTF-ELCAC was formed. So we're talking about 4 or 5 years. Now we're down to 20. 19 are weakened and 1 is active.
What regions are last strongholds?
The last strongholds, some are surprising. Abra, of course, has.
Cordillera.
Quezon has. Meron daw sa Pangasinan, Tarlac area, dun sa tri-boundary, na weekend front, which I'm really surprised. There are, of course, Bicol, but I'm from Bicol, so I know it's relatively peaceful. So there's one in Camarines Sur, probably one in Masbate as well. Samar.
It's the remaining.
That's the remaining.
Mindanao,
strong
wala na
front.
masyado. Kasi back in the day, di ba, they had even a common front with the
That's
Moro Liberation Front.
Davao has been cleared. The presence of the NPA in Mindanao is Caraga region. So that's Surigao and Agusan provinces. And there is still in Negros Island. So it's manageable now. It's the problem is manageable, and I hope that the Philippine Army and the armed forces can deliver on their commitment to finish off the armed component, no?
Parang nasabi, 2 years? May ganong ano? Or do you think it's possible na in 2 years time, yung armed component, ma-subdue na or matigil na?
I think so. Pero siguro, realistically and not putting too much pressure on the army, maybe at the end of the administration of BBM.
2028.
Tapos natin lahat yung ano.
Armed component.
No?
Yun naman eh.
But critical yan kasi even if buhay pa si above ground organizations, wala nang tatapunan ng mga kadre, di ba? Kasi recruit sa LFS, wala namang
and they will be effectively a peaceful front. I mean, even if they have, militant objectives, at the end of the day, as long as you get rid of the armed rebellion threat. Diba?
Kasi tinan mo, ang mahirap talaga dyan is the continued recruitment feeds the supply of cadres going to the mountains. But if we can limit, diba, if we can decimate the armed component, naku, wala nang pupuntahan. And as you said, they're now part of the legitimate opposition. So fine, that's good.
Which we have no problem with. You're absolutely free to criticize the state and push for a more progressive state.
We have no problem with it. They have all the rights and
we
privileges.
We have peaceful progressive groups like Akbayan, for instance, who are there, and there's no problem with them. One of them is a senator already.
Yes.
Very progressive, pushing for the national interest.
Because it's important that we settle our internal security problems because we have to face a more bigger problem, which is the threat.
Which we'll discuss in a separate. But before we end on this episode, we really have to bring this up. Sorry, I mean this is quite. I mean, what's happening here? Is this a full disintegration? Nagsusurrender ba sila? And of course, speaking of surrender, I mean recently you had to deal a lot with the media because of the cases of 2 environmental activists who apparently ended up accusing the government of setting them up rather than them being rescued by the government. Like, first of all, I mean before. Yung pagbaba from 80 to just over a dozen, is this like nagsusurrender sila or is this, what's going on here?
Pero sagutin ko lang, Richard, yung sinasabi mo. Actually, it was government who was set up by these 2. Yun ang ang masakit dyan. And it was done in full view because we were very transparent. It was streamed live. Hindi totoo na kinat namin. If you watch the press conference, she was speaking her mind. No?
Pati yung dalawang environmentalist daw.
Against reclamation.
Which in fact, they are members of the New People's Army. No? So we did not cut it. Tuloy-tuloy lang siya. And then, nagsalita yung iba. So it's not true that kinat yung kanya. She was able to say all that she wants to say. Na she was abducted and whatever. No? So, doon na set up kami, no? Because she came of her own volition. She went to the Philippine Army. Sabi niya gusto niya na magbagong buhay. We started the process of reintegrating her. That's why we got PAW lawyers to come. And the PAW lawyers placed her in another room. Nag-usap sila together with the parents.
May footages ba ng mga yan just to show na walang duress? Or they are not tortured into saying things against?
On my way here, we were doing a press conference and we released that to the media. So makikita ng taong bayan that yung sinasabi sa Kongreso na this was at the Battle of Bagan. That's not true. So kaya kami, of course, we're the reputation of NTF-ELCAC, as you said, is very important. Kasi that's why we're pushing back.
And you're fixing things and improving things.
We're pushing back, no? Yeah. Itong dalawa said that they wanted to go back to the folds of the law. They wanted to be reintegrated. Sure, that's why we processed it. And then they said, we're ready to face the media. We organized a press conference for them. And then ginanon ng gobyerno. So medyo nasaktan din kami doon. That's why we're pushing back.
You're saying it was a PR stunt? Or maybe they were under duress from the other side to change their tone? Because I don't think you can just go to a rebellion and then come out and just like that. And right? I mean, you tell me about
that. That's right. It could have been a PR stunt. Napainan kami. No? Or it could have been during the press con, some of her colleagues were there, the former comrades na nandun. And then something clicked in her mind. Kasi diba, if you join the communist movement, you do it for life. If you leave, gaganon din kanila, no? So she herself...
Especially if you go public and, the embarrassed and all of that.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So it's possible that there was someone in the crowd that she saw and then nag-click uli, and then that's what she said. But in any case, she's fine. Everybody, people were told to believe that desparasido siya. Ibig sabihin, sinalvage siya. It's not true. She's fine. She's been turned over to the CHR. Now she's with Karapatan. So
with CHR and Karapatan. Okay.
Yeah, and Karapatan, as leftist, no?
Yeah.
So she is in good health, no? So kaya nga sinasabi ko, well, if she was really abducted, why would government abduct her? Or why would the military abduct her and then present her in a press con? It doesn't make sense. It's too much of a risk, no? For that,
so,
but
so decided baka they were tortured or pressured to
there were no claims of torture. She herself did not mention any torture, and if she was tortured, she would have come out in the media by now. Di ba, showing her
even their own family, di ba?
Yes, and their own families were there, and her own family was surprised.
Din.
Surprised because kinausap din niya yung kanyang anak. The mayor also of Plaridel talked to her.
Right.
And during the execution of the affidavit, the mayor of Angat was also there. And the PAO lawyer was also there. So we have a strong case against her. That's why the government, the DND, for example, is considering filing cases of perjury against her.
And just to close this episode, because now we have to move to the real threat for me, which is external security. Favorite natin, pwede na tayo dyan, bakery. Is this a disintegration that we're seeing right now from 80 to just over a dozen? So, of course, this surrender case didn't turn out very well in the PR sense. We're still getting to the bottom of this. But are we seeing en masse surrendering and people giving up and joining the reintegration program? Can you tell us about this? Because it's quite a huge job. I mean, once upon a time, these guys had 100,000 strong force, and now you're saying ilan na lang pitik-pitik dito, di ba?
It's a huge drop, which allows us to concentrate more resources on the remaining guerrilla fronts. That's why the battalions that were once assigned to Davao Region have now been transferred to the Samar. So that's why, because of the intensive military operations in Samar, dun napatay si Chamson. So the death of Joma, the deaths of the Chamson, the deaths of the front committees, the regional committees heads in Davao Region and many parts of the country made them sort of leaderless. No? And as you said, given that many of the guerrilla fronts have disintegrated or have been severely weakened, mahina na talaga sila. So we need to keep up this momentum. That's why I was so happy when President BBM decided to continue the NTF-ELCAC. Kasi, again, mas Pilipinas, gano'n naman, di ba? Pag nagpapalit ang administrasyon, tayo yung mga proyekto nung nakaraan, gagawa ng sarili. So, what the president did was to continue it.
But with improvement, with tweaks, with people like you there, which is, we find that very assuring. Any other question, Mark, before we go?
Yun naman, I just wanted for the public then to hear straight from
from the other side.
Yung mga magagandang nagagawa on that. Ang gusto lang naman natin in the end is peace para sa lahat. Ayaw natin yung Pilipino nagpapatayan kapwa Pilipino, 'di ba? Okay lang yung sa politics diyan, magtalo diyan, pero yung sa insurgency, hopefully po nga, sana nga magkatotoo nga by the end of PBBM is we no longer have that problem.
Yeah, and we have no problem with, opposition, peaceful, parliamentary opposition. No problem with that.
Of course not. Yeah.
Definitely. Just to be clear, this is not crackdown on just anyone against the government. Thank you very much, Yusek Malaya. I think medyo uminit na tayo, and that sets us perfectly for our next episode. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Salamat.
Stay tuned. We're gonna talk about even a bigger communist movement that we have to deal with. Maraming salamat.
Real Talk